All right, so welcome to our panel discussion. We're just sharing highlights from the conference so far, and there's been many. And I think Is Sally going to start off?
I can start.
Yeah, off you go.
Okay. Yesterday, for me, a highlight would have been the symposium on the new release of International Standards of Practice for Ecological Restoration. I think there was some really great information put out in that document that will be released in the upcoming weeks. And I think all people in bush regeneration, whether it be in planning or practice, should use those documents to inform their restoration practice and inform their decisions. I think it can help to scale up the works that we do within bush regeneration for both volunteers and the paid sector. Yeah.
Could I follow on from that?
Of course.
Because my highlight for yesterday, I have a different highlight today, but yesterday was the same session.
Yeah.
And there was the Portuguese woman, Ana Mendes, who talked about the definitions of restoration ecology. And it made me, at first I was like, why is she doing that? Why is this a project? And then since then I've been going, no, this is a project. Because I often go, it's kept me thinking ever since, oh, yes, I do an awful lot of legal case of like appeals in Victoria, and we work through a lot of permits as consultants, and they're done really badly. Basically, planners who require they think they want to require restoration, and they do it badly. It's done badly in the legal system, and so that was. But it's a highlight, but also to me it's. Can I do something about this when I already do have lots of things in life? But it's a project. Look at the definitions of restoration ecology in our laws, so that when they're actually required by in decisions, that it's done well, and that's a problem. But it isn't done well now.
Yeah, one of the highlights for me about yesterday's sessions was first of all just the coming together of Western science and traditional knowledge of owners and peoples, and in particular the fact that in Australia we have this incredible history of knowledge of country, 65,000 years almost, and that came to the fore yesterday, just how lucky we are in this country to have this knowledge. And it's an honour to come here to the conference in Australia, in Darwin in particular, with so many wonderful people, and see that there is incredible progress being made throughout the whole world in the space of ecological restoration.
Thank you kindly, Virginia, for the digital message stick. It reminds me of the first thing I went to yesterday morning was the yarning circle not far from here. And when you speak, you take the message stick. So, to me, that was the first thing I went to, and the last thing almost I went to yesterday was the yarning circle. And to me, it's some of the most important things. I was joking a little earlier that I thought that we should perhaps cut the academic deliveries in half and have a lot more, lounges with red lighting, and the discussion is critical to me. It's truly is. It was highlighted with this last session with captains of world industry, and that was attempting once again to introduce that panel discussion there. It is that integration between the levels, culture, business, academia. That's the missing thing that's been highlighted again. That's the difficult. So communication. Loving the conference so far, thank you. And Louise, I think it's on to you.
Oh, rightio. Well, we had the opening yesterday, is that right? Am I in the right day? I'm getting very confused with the days by now. And I mean, that was spectacular, welcome to country. But we also had a couple of speakers, and they were fantastic. The first one was an indigenous woman from the Argyle area, where they have had mining on their land, and the company's in the process of closing it, the mine down, she's
a Gidja person.
A Gidja person, right. And we'll give the land back to the community, but they are obviously trying to make sure that the condition they get the land back to them is in a condition that they can look after somehow. That was the message I got, and that's been a very difficult thing and quite emotional for her. And then we had the most amazing woman from Kenya, who I think is somewhere high up in the UN or something like that, but she stood there for about 15 minutes in her beautiful dress and talked. I think she took a breath, but she talked for a length of time on it. But what was surprising to me was that when you talk like that continually, it was very coherent. You think. Anyway, she was amazing. But the other good thing with that was that we have a lot of Indigenous people here from different countries, and so people, when it was question time, a few of them got up. There's a guy from Brazil, someone from Saudi Arabia, someone from the East Indies, was it something like that? And all of them had the same message, that they just cannot get through to people who are overseeing all these things. You know, they don't get consulted, they don't get to talk very much, and you've got to be very strong to continue that.
Yep. So just pulling some of the topics that seem to be resonating for me. I was fortunate to visit the Ranger Uranium mine at Kakadu, and we had the chance to talk with the get a perspective on what happens when the mines cease earning income and what they're prepared to invest in to do the restoration. And Ranger was exceptional in that they were investing a lot of money to restore the landscape, actually filling in the pits. But then you had the contrast with Argyle, where they're walking away and they're handing back a very different landscape that is devastating to the indigenous communities that then have to care and take these sites on as part of their cultural contribution to caring for country. I think there seems to be a real disconnect between these mine establishment processes that, you know, happened 30 odd years ago, when there was not the conversation with the traditional owners. We just heard about free informed consent, and this obviously wasn't given, but in both of these cases, and now the legislation isn't sort of fit for purpose. And so I think it's a real more mine closures are going to be happening, and how do we get a better outcome when these multinationals have taken the money and they're basically running.
Can I continue that? I'll continue that theme of the Argyle diamond mine. To me, the end of that presentation with the picture of the actual pit, it's half a kilometre deep, it's kilometres long, and one thing I was just looking at it going, how do you design that project? What a huge restoration project, engineering at the, you know, momentous engineering, and then the getting all the proper input from the indigenous people whose land it is, but also it made me think it's shocking what they've been handed. They've been handed the mine closed 2 years ago. They, in theory, which is the most outrageous theory, outrageous program, that by 2035 they'll have the land handed back. And when I look at that, I thought it would take you years just to design it. Between engineers, the indigenous people who have the rights to the land, and the science of the ecology to put back on top. It would take years just to design that project, much less get it done by 2035 and hand it back. And that's what's really that was astounding about that presentation, and that woman's strength as well.
Like the fight. Can I just pick up with the toilet conversation we were having, Sally? So we were both in the plenary talking about the role of global business in moving the process of ecological restoration along, and I guess it was.
For me, a lot of these things sound really nice when big businesses talk about ecological restoration and the things that they're doing, and they may be making positive change, but a lot of their businesses in my opinion, serve no purpose for society. I don't think that we need to have 10 different types of shampoo on the shelf that extract from, 100 different countries across the world. I also think that a lot of those corporations are trying to bring indigenous people into the corporation through using them as, say, for farmers as examples, and integrating them into more of a Western lifestyle, whereas that may not necessarily be what those indigenous cultures want. I can't articulate what I want to fully say from our bathroom conversation. But yeah, sometimes those sort of big corporation conversations sit a bit off with me, and I think I need to delve into my own personal beliefs a bit more to understand that. And maybe I'm just young and a bit cynical about corporations, I don't know.
So the other conversation which I had the symposium I sat in was on natural capital accounting, and I think that was, I guess, interesting to see that there is a way of, there is a process being put into place about how to actually put a value on biodiversity and have it recorded so that it can be part of the accounting system, that it is possible, it is doable, and it is happening, and it's one of the ways hopefully forward that we'll be able to get true cost on the ecosystem services and the inherent biodiversity that exists. So looking forward to that progressing as well.
Yeah, yesterday I attended the innovation session, and that was fantastic because there are many great things out there, especially in mine site rehabilitation, where some companies have come up with innovative mechanistic means of direct seeding very large areas of vegetative seed to restore the vegetation, and freely making available, all the IP around the technology that they've developed for anyone to use in any mine site anywhere around the world, which is pretty phenomenal. And another talk was on the use of drones for aerial seeding, which was by Air Seed, and they've come up with this technology to drop small little pellets of seeds that are encased in with soil, a little bit of fertiliser and bacteria that can be dropped into very inaccessible areas in terms of direct seeding. So that was another great example of innovation. And what else was there? There was a talk about robotics and the use of robotics in America for the restoration of prairie grasslands, and just using artificial intelligence to identify the most appropriate areas where to direct seed. So this robot that they've developed basically scans the soil and looks for cracks and opportunities where to best place any seed into that environment. So I thought that was really amazing to see these innovations.
I'll go back to the business case of ecological restoration we had this morning. To me, I understand the cynicism entirely about big corporations, but how I always think about it and why it's so important to engage, and why I think what we saw today from this morning was impressive too, is that, of course, what we do, the destruction of the planet's on an industrial scale, and if we don't get the solutions up on an industrial scale, like we have this problem, I think, in which we do lots of little bits and pieces, or we restore a hectare here or there, but you need the solutions have to be industrial scale. So I always I might not buy their products, but I want them to do more right. I had a conversation after that session with Damien Cook, who does wetlands in northern Victoria, and he said he's already got farmers coming to him saying, help us look after our wetlands, because the EU is going to make us be nature, look after nature, or they won't buy our products.
Yes, that's right.
And the point, the other key point about this is you don't want Europeans who don't understand Australian ecology, Australian people, Australian law, etc., to tell us how to run it. We want to do the right thing and determine our own path, which ironically is exactly what the farmers are saying about. They don't want to be screwed over by by a bias from a European perspective of looking after the environment. But we have the people here to do it. We can tell our own farmers what we think should be done. And we've been telling them, but now the people who buy their products are going to tell them, and they're going to come to us. And we need to be ready.
It's that thing of being one step ahead. Otherwise, there'll be a whole lot of people telling us inappropriately how to look after our land, like we've already happened when Europeans came here.
Yeah.